Well, on September 11th, 2001, I was living in Mount Vernon, New York, which is part of Westchester County, which is the first county that you get to once you leave the Bronx, which is the northernmost of New York City's 5 boroughs. And I was working for the Macy's department store in White Plains, which was a 15-minute train ride from Mount Vernon to White Plains. And the first inkling that I got that there was something amiss, I think I took the 8:45 train, which got to White Plains at 9:06. And when I got off the train, I heard a passenger on the platform say to the conductor who was leaning out the window that a plane just hit one of the towers of the World Trade Center. And she said that, and I just thought that's kind of odd, but I didn't think anything of it. So it's a 5-minute walk from the train station to Macy's White Plains. And when I got into the department where I work, which is rugs, I heard some people in the furniture, and I always go and visit with them before the store actually opens. And they were saying, yes, a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center, and we had taken one of the clock radios from one of the secretary's office, and we brought it into the area where the furniture was, where you could mingle with the customers, and we were listening to CBS News Radio 88. And at that point, I don't really remember, but at some point, you realized that the situation was serious when the second plane had hit, so you knew that there was a serious situation. So I actually ducked out of the store, and I went across the street to a dentist's office, because I knew he had a TV in his sort of waiting room, and so I was standing outside and watching, and I could see the smoke billowing out of both towers. So I knew that this was a serious situation, but at that moment, which is probably in the neighborhood of 9:30, I thought that the firefighters would be able to douse the fires and that the situation would be all right. I did not ever think that one or both towers would come down. So I went back to the department, and we had a few customers mingling there about, and then whenever a customer wasn't in rugs, I would dash over to the furniture and listen to the radio. And I do distinctly remember one of the anchor in the radio station communicating with one of the reporters who was on the scene, saying that all of a sudden there was this loud explosion and they saw a lot of smoke, and her words were, "I don't think the building is here anymore." So I rushed outside again to look at the situation at the dentist's office, and you could clearly see the huge billowing of smoke, and you could tell that indeed one of the buildings had collapsed. And so then you didn't know what to think, and then there was a lot of confusion because there was breaking news. There was a plane crashing at Camp David. There was a car bomb at the State Department. So it was very confusing, very nerve-wracking, and it was just a bizarre day. Yeah.
How do you think your life? How would you say your life is, if any, has
Yeah,
changed?
I will be quite candid in saying that it hasn't changed one bit. And I think this is a position that a lot of people probably will not appreciate. But my life has not been affected by 9/11. I will say this. My shift ended at 6 o'clock. I took the train home without incident. I've felt that these terrorists, they were targeting symbolic icons of Americana. If they really, really and truly wanted to stoke fear amongst the American people, and this is a fear that I've always had because in 2002, I was transferred to the Macy's department store in New York City, which necessitated me taking the subway to work each day. If they really wanted to create fear and pandemonium, they would, and I was waiting for them to put one of these suicide bombers on the subway train, but they never did that. So it really hasn't changed my life in the sense that I do not fear these people, so if that was their aim, they didn't win as far as I was concerned. Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add as we come up on the 10th anniversary in remembrance?
Certainly it was a sad day, and I do remember coming home that night. I rushed home and was glued to the television, and it was just really sad that the terrorists, their victims were innocent people, good, decent people who, they didn't deserve that. And one of the many memories is that on that day, in the hospitals in Lower Manhattan, they had people lined up because there was this clarion call for people to come and donate blood. And they had hundreds and hundreds of people at the hospitals, and they had the doctors and nurses, but they didn't have any victims because, you were either dead or you could walk home. So that's one of the images, how people rallied, and they were willing to do their part to help the victims. Yeah. No. Well, I can talk about people who I know that were. I had two friends, and one of them was a church associate of mine who worked for HSBC, and they were housed not in one of the Twin Towers, but in one of the other buildings in the complex that did collapse later that day. And he recounted for us the experience that he and his colleagues and hundreds of other people, their only route of escape was a ferry to New Jersey. And that the smoke was such that he ripped off he took off his dress shirt that he'd worn to work that day, and he was cutting it into pieces so that various people could use it to sort of shield the dust from them. And I remember speaking to his wife on Sunday. I said, well, what was Brian like when he came home? And so when she opened up the door, he was standing in front of the door. His clothes were tattered, and he had dust from head to toe. And I had another church colleague who was nowhere near the World Trade Center that day, more in Midtown Manhattan, but he was so distraught by the experience that he really and truly he wanted to pack up his family and return to Utah, where he was from. But he said that his wife urged him just to pray and just to ask God for strength, and he said by the time he got to Thursday that he was better again. So certainly there were people who I know that were there and had these kinds of harrowing tales to tell about just trying to get out of there alive, and just sort of relying on their faith to sort of get them to, to navigate the first few days of the situation. Yep.
All right, well,
Pledge of Allegiance. Do you want me to?